Well, we have made it to the end of this week. It is a week that's been exciting for me. It's a week that's been up and down, good roller coastering. Right outside, a few minutes before I've gone on the air, it has began pouring rain, torrential rain. And I just began to think about the song, showers of blessings we need. Mercy drops round us are falling, but for the showers we plead. I want to share with you how God has showered blessings on me in an unusual way, not with a lot of victories, but with some uncovered, unearthed failings of mine. And I share them not to advertise, not to sensationalize, but I share them with you so that you can help to grow while I continue to grow. Hello. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the 10 Commandments of Leadership. This is where we grow emerging leaders. We do two main things here. We educate, equip, and empower emerging leaders with God thought leadership. And also, what we do is we present current events and newsmakers in the light of biblical best practices. We do all of that under the rubric of this particular show. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, are you living or working below your God-given best life? Are you all or even close to all that God intends for you to be? I thought I was. I thought I was for decades until I hit rock bottom. And then I discovered what my number one problem was. And I'll share that with you today. What I also want to share with you, and my title today is A Space Cadet No More. A Space Cadet No More. What do I mean? This morning, as part of my devotional, I've gone back to reading my Life Recovery Bible. If you don't have one, if you are a recovering egoholic or know someone that needs this, how we get this book? This is a Bible. It's in the Living Bible version of the Bible, but it is also patterned after and parallels to the 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous AA program. Its commentaries are rich and full. And so this morning I've been reading through the book of Exodus, and I read Exodus, I think it was 36 and 37. And those chapters dealt with the instructions, detailed instructions from God through Moses for the building of the sanctuary, the temporary sanctuary in the wilderness. Now, it is one of those chapters, just be honest with you, that you kind of like brush through. We aren't building any sanctuaries nowadays. But the commentary is what stuck with me. Let me share the commentary with you that I read. And it was commentary on the last few verses of chapter 37 in Exodus. It said, high expectations are difficult for anyone to cope with, even for people with a great deal of ability. It is quite common for supremely gifted people to never approach their potential because they fear failure. And that was the commentary from the Life Recovery Bible on Exodus chapter 37, verses 1 through 9. It focused on the character, on the personage of Bezalel or Bezaleel or Bezaleel. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. Hopefully next week I'll have a more definitive pronunciation of his name. But anyway, he was the chief architect that God had filled his spirit with for him to be the general contractor, for want of a better term, on the wilderness sanctuary. He was the prime architect of this tabernacle in the wilderness. And as I read that story, I felt very much closely akin to him because I, like him, was gifted. I was gifted in communication. I was gifted in charisma. I was gifted in connections. But for years, just like the prodigal son in the New Testament, I used those gifts for everything but for God. And when I was reading Exodus 37 this morning in my Life Recovery Bible this morning, it brought home the truth to me in a way that I had never fully realized before. Bezalel, unlike so many of us, didn't shrink from the high expectations placed upon him, as opposed to trying to run away from who he was and whose he was. He didn't shrink from that at all. He didn't shrink from those high expectations. He didn't hide, he didn't hoard, and he did not hijack his gifts. He used them faithfully and skillfully to build the sanctuary and to train others to do the same. It wasn't just enough for him to be a skilled craftsman. He became a manager of not just physical resources, but of human resources. Well, for years, I ran. I ran from my gift and I ran from God. As I shared in a 2006 devotional reflection in this book called Fit Forever by Dr. Kate Kuzma, I did a reflection in this book entitled, I Am a Recovering Egoholic. And ironically to me, it was published on July 13th, which was my 52nd birthday at that time. I once saw my space-given traits as marks of independence, but my space, my SPACE, my smarts, my physique, my articulation, my charisma, and my ethics, those things that were God-given, they became the very fuel for my egoholism. Egoholism, the first definition that I arrived at, egoholism is the compulsion to act and or react excessively because of feelings of inadequacy. I'll say that again. Egoholism, the first definition that I came up with, is the compulsion to act and or react excessively because of feelings of inadequacy, either through inflated or deflated egos. I wasn't addicted to substances, but I was addicted to self. I was addicted to attention, to applause, and to achievement. As I wrote then, I was a well-educated, highly articulate, and charismatic space cadet, using God's gifts without acknowledging his gift-giving role. Because I took all those talents and used them otherwise, I was a space cadet. It wasn't until my life crashed in 1987, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, that I found myself crawling back to God. That return was fueled, ironically, not by success, but by failure. And later I realized I hadn't feared failure. I feared succeeding, but I feared succeeding at the wrong things. But just as Bezalel didn't build the tabernacle alone, I now know I'm not called to carry this calling, this message solo. God gave me these gifts not to hoard, but to share, to equip, to reproduce. Today, through this EMC squared initiative, this egoholism measurement calculator for correction, I'm using my communications gifts not to seduce or to manipulate, but to illuminate and to educate. And like Bezalel, who not only built, but trained others, I now see my calling to include several things: announcing this message, creating awareness through keynotes, media, workshops, and writing, equipping others. I'm looking forward to soon launching the TAILS Foundation. TAILS, T-A-I-L-S. It's an acronym. You know, I love acronyms. It's an acronym for the Tim Allston Institute for Leadership Services. It'll become a training and licensing of emerging leaders, HR professionals, and leadership developers in the principles of egoholism recovery. This isn't just about building one tabernacle, building Tim Allston. No. It's about multiplying leaders who can build temples of integrity and purpose wherever they go. In my inflated egoholism, I once saw myself as the sun. But now, through my recovering, I see that I am not the sun. I am at best the moon, reflecting the light of the true sun, the true source. My recovering model begins at the top, the TOP. Target the problem, I own it completely, and then I proceed immediately toward transformation. Like Bezalel, I now know my craftsmanship is not for applause, but for assignment. Not for ego, but for edification. May the temple I build now be one of truth, transparency, and transformation in me and through me. Lord, my prayer is, Lord, help me acknowledge my egoholic nature and walk humbly each day with you. That's my goal. I've stopped running from God. I've stopped trying to do my own thing. I've stopped trying to live by self-confidence, which is limited, but I now live by God confidence, which is only limited by God, who is limitless. I hope by me sharing my story, once again, not to advertise or not to sensationalize my wrongdoing, but to point you in a direction that you do not have to make these same mistakes again. And that if you make these mistakes, then come here and we can begin the correction process. In the next few days, I will begin to unpack this EMC squared, this egoholism measurement calculator for correction. It's easy for me to say I created this, but the reality is God created it. And he loved me enough and loves me enough to send it through me because of the fact that I'm collecting the raw data, but more importantly, I'm telling the raw story of my life. As I like to say, why me? Because data without lived testimony feels very, very clinical, very, very hands-off. It's very, very academic, very, very scientific. But on the other hand, testimonies without data seems purely anecdotal, seems purely like just a feel-good storytelling. What God is allowing me to do in my special calling is to bring both of them together for you, for his glory and your and my edification. If anything I've said today has been inspiring, has been encouraging, has been informative, then please like it, share it, and subscribe to it. Share with your friends who you know are going through the same kind of struggle in their distorted view of themselves or their egoholism. Enjoy the weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Take care.